Thank you for joining us for our 8th and final Waterhackweek seminar for 2019. My name is Christina Bandaragoda, and I'm part of the leadership team organizing Waterhackweek and this Cyberseminar series. We started the Cyberseminar series on January 17th, 2019 with an introduction to HydroShare and the compute resources available through the CUAHSI Jupyter Hub server. We'll be using HydroShare for sharing and publishing data during Waterhackweek. If you Google Waterhackweek Cyberseminar, you will see the full list of seminars covering data access, time series statistics, workflows for gridded climate data sets, an intro to Git and GitHub, the Land Lab modeling framework, and then finally this Tethys Cyberseminar. Please share these with friends and colleagues and use them as a reference resource for your own self-guided cyber training related to water and environmental data science and water research. To get started on today's cyber seminar, I'd like to introduce Rohit Khattar, who will teach us about tools for building apps using Tethys. Take it away. Go ahead.
Awesome. Good morning / afternoon / evening for whichever part of the world you're in. My name is Rohit Khattar. If you have difficulty ever pronouncing that, if you ever need to pronounce Rohit, it's rowing a boat and hitting someone, and that's how you get my name. I am a second-year PhD student at BYU, Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. I have a master's in civil engineering from Brigham Young University as well. I've been working with quality products for a while. I developed HydroServer Lite, which is a PHP-based HydroServer application. And a lot of my time currently goes into working on Tethys, which we are soon going to learn a little bit about and see how we can use Tethys to develop apps on the web to display / find data, or to maybe generate some graphs and whatever you want to do with it. It's pretty robust in that aspect. We're just going to be doing a little bit of introductory Tethys today, where we're going to talk about why we have Tethys and what it can help us do, and how we would do some basic things like set up a new app in Tethys. And we'll go over that. And we're going to use my friend Dave here. Dave's been with me in this presentation for a few years now, so he's my favorite Tethys guy to present with. And yeah, let's get started. I just realized how weird this is that I can't see your faces. So let's go. So who's Dave? Let's talk about Dave a little bit for a second. Dave's a thinker. He's a problem solver. You can call him an engineer, a scientist. That's a few terms that you can use to describe Dave. He likes to travel. As you can see, he has a nice boat. And he likes to visit different places in the world. He likes to eat a lot, so he's kind of like me. But he does like to take his boat out into the ocean. And we'll see why this is important in a second. One time he did actually go out to the boat with his friend Rob, and they ran into a flash flood, and Rob almost went overboard and died, and Dave had to struggle really, really hard to save him. Now Dave's a problem solver, so he thought, what if I come up with something that will, maybe warn me about a flash flood or prevent this from happening again? What can I do? And being the millennial that Dave is, he said that he should make an app. So he thinks of it. He has an idea. He thinks we should make an app, but how to do one? He has never made an app before. He doesn't really want to learn all the technologies involved and sit and connect all of them together. And then he goes into more and more philosophical questions where he's like, how do I even start making an app? What is an app? Who am I? What is life? And so on and so forth. So he does what everybody else would do. He goes to Google. And there's this nice little website called Let Me Google That For You. So Dave goes there. He's like trying to Google. He's like, okay, I want to develop an app about water resources. And I want to make it fast, and I want to do it in the web. And I might want to use Python because I have learned that language in one class years ago. He finds something called Tethys Platform, which you can see is the third link. Well, I think it's second now if you Google it. And that's what we're going to talk about, what Tethys platform is. So let's see. Okay. So what's Tethys? It's a collection of different tools. It's based on the Django web framework. So it comes along with the latest standards in web technology like HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. It also brings in some mapping tools. So you have OpenLayers, which is a free of cost mapping service that you can use. It also comes in with other mapping libraries like Google Maps. Then it also brings in some things that you can store your spatial data on, which one of the most popular free tools is GeoServer. And now we have support for Threads server as well. It is, though, based on the Esri JavaScript standards, so it brings in Esri JavaScript as well, so you can have Esri mapping tools if you would like to use those. It has Docker containers for some other PostGIS, or sorry, not PostGIS, but some other GIS services like 52 North. You can set up a PostGIS container, which is just a GIS database based on PostgreSQL, but it allows you to do a lot of spatial operations, searches, and all the fun stuff involved in there. And it's basically faster for storing your spatial data. And as I said, this is based on Django, so it's written in Python. Python's comparatively a less structured language compared to C++ and C#. And so at least it's personally, I feel it's a little bit easier to onboard onto Python based on Django. And it's built with user access control, and we'll see why that's important in the future. But it can basically allow people, certain set of people to certain features of your app, and you can prevent, a non-admin user for changing something in your app that you wouldn't want. So what Tethys is basically a big box of all of this combined together. So we took all of these technologies and melded them together and made sure that they can talk to each other, communicate, and that's what gives us Tethys platform, which is a big box of WebGIS stuff for making web apps. And that's basically what the tool is. And so now out of Tethys, you can get these nice apps. And I'm going to pause my presentation here and go on towards a demo so we can see what's happening there. Let's go. So we're going to go to tethys.byu.edu, which is our Tethys server at BYU. I hope the font's big enough. And actually, let's go a little bit smaller. Okay, perfect. And we have a lot of different apps on Tethys.byu that the research department at BYU has developed over the last, I'd say, about 4 or 5 years. Some of them have been developed in partnership with other third world countries like Nepal, India, and we've done work in DR, we've done work in Colombia. And there's a lot of different tools, but one of the ones that I would like to focus on right now, just to give you an example of what is possible with Tethys, and the kind of the scope of things you can do with that, is the streamflow prediction tool, which is the kind of it's like a Tesla Model S compared to the Tesla Model 3s we have. It's a prime product, and what you can do is basically you can go across different regions. So I'm going to go to South America and view the watersheds that we have over there. So now these are watersheds that are delineated from the ECMWF data that comes in. And then that ECMWF, it's a 52 ensemble forecast for the next 15 days. What we do is we run the runoff through the Rapid, which uses the Muskingum method to basically give us a nice stream flow estimate of how the streams are going to behave. So if I was to focus on a certain region, so I can see that the app is pretty standard. There's some buttons here. There's some content, so you can turn off certain visibility features. So it's kind of like an ArcGIS, toolbox on the side. And then you have a nice little map where you can zoom into regions. And once you zoom in far enough, so we're going to Bogota, Colombia, you can see the rivers showing up. And now you can select a certain stream. So let's say I was interested in how the stream would actually behave. And I can select which ECMWF forecast I'm looking for, and I can select a data set from there. And let's say I wanted the forecast that was generated on the 6th, so yesterday's, and then it gives me a nice little estimate. So if you notice, it's a mean, max, and min estimates because we have 52 ensembles, so it generates all of that data for us, and it allows you to view it on the graph. Now, the good part with Tethys is all of this beautiful, modals, this graphing utility, these buttons, these tabs that you want to do, the mapping utility, all these sidebars. And for example, if you had a nice little info pop-up, which, wow, doesn't work. But anyways, all of this is built into Tethys. And so you don't have to do any work developing all of this from scratch. All you have to know is how to use them. And that's about what we're going to go over today. By the end of today, so let me just show you what we are aiming towards. Server. There we go. And let's log in. So by the end of today, what we are going to target is just a very simple app that has a map that shows up, and a few buttons on there, and then you've made like a few pages on here, and people can click on stuff, and that's basically what we're going to start with, because that's going to give you a good enough idea of the tools that are involved here. And once we have that idea, we can start thinking and brainstorming on different apps that we would like to work on either during the Waterhackweek or before the Waterhackweek, or whenever would you like to do something with Tethys. And so that's kind of what we were going to go towards. I am going to post this link on our chat, which is a getting started tutorial that Tethys has on their website. So let's switch over to that. Basically, it's just a good little tutorial that you can follow along if you would like to, but I recommend that you try this on your own time, because installing Tethys, depending on your system, could take a little long. For Linux and Mac, it's pretty straightforward. For Windows, it's a little bit complicated. But the installation steps are pretty straightforward. You do a wget on a script. All of the commands that you'd have to run are run on a terminal or on a command line in Windows. If you're using a system that has Linux installed, it will have wget. And all you do is get this install script from our GitHub, and then you can just run bash install Tethys. There's a lot of different options you can configure, and there are pretty good explanations on the website, so I will skip over those for now. If you have any installation questions, please send me a message on Slack, or you can email me, or you can tweet me, whichever way you would reach out on me. But yeah, once you get that installed, then it's a pretty easy path from there. So we're going to get started with this tutorial. It's about 11:14, so perfect. And what we're going to talk about is how Tethys apps work. So let me go over back to my presentation. And again, let's see, there we go. And then let's go back to our app framework. So an application in Tethys consists of a few specific set of files. Since they are all Django applications, they are designed in a way. The good part is Tethys gives you tools to scaffold this app, so to generate a new app, and you don't have to worry about making sure that these files are named right and they're in the right directories and stuff. But when you do an app scaffold, this is what is generated. You have a setup.py file that kind of tells the portal. So there are two things. There's a Tethys portal and a Tethys app. Tethys portal is what I just showed you, what that was running on my system, or on Tethys.byu, where this collection of apps is the Tethys portal, while each one of these is a Tethys app that is added separately. So going back to our framework, we have a setup.py that kind of tells the portal how to install this app. And then we have these files in there that we'll go over some of these files today and see how we can make changes to them and how we can affect our app. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's start a scaffolding app. So let's create a new app, and I'm going to be following step-by-step instructions from these documentations, which you can always go back to in the future and try and follow along, and then you can send me any questions that you would have about it. Or we have a nice little Tethys user group as well on Google, and you can use that to send us questions as well. So anyways, let's get started on this one, and I am going to pull up my terminal along with this so we can do some of the stuff. So let's hope this works. So the first step you do is you have a new directory that you're going to do some Tethys dev into. So I am going to, let's create a new directory. And now we have a nice little directory called Tethys dev. Let's go back a little bit, and there we go. Okay. And now the command that you run for the Tethys scaffold is just pretty simple. I'm going to do a sudo because of my permissions, but you don't need to. You would just do Tethys scaffold and then the name of your app. However, I want to create this app within my dev directory that I just created, so I'm going to switch to that. It's empty, and let's do Tethys. So sudo Tethys scaffold. And I'm going to call this Waterhackweek. Let's go down. And when that happens, what Tethys is going to do is generate those files for us within that project. And it's saying, creating new Tethys project name, Tethys app Waterhackweek. Right. So it attaches this namespace to every app it creates because Django apps are universal across your system. So the namespace helps Tethys keeps all the Tethys apps separate. Once you run this command, it's going to ask us for certain inputs, so a proper name for the app. I'm okay with the default, brief description, demo for Waterhackweek. Oh, that's a good acronym. App theme color. So if you notice, the default theme color that in this app is orange, but the one that gets loaded is this Tethys beautiful blue, because we're water related, so yay. But you can choose something, so that's the default hash. You can choose a different key code if you would like. I'm going to stick with default. You can add some tags to your app, just so that makes it easier to search for. Author name is me, and email is great@byu.net. You can have a license. I'm just going to leave it at MIT for now. And what it's going to do is, if you notice through your list, it's going to go ahead and create a bunch of files. So let's look at those files. I like to use Sublime as my text editor, so I'm going to pull up Sublime, and let's try to look at these files in there. So if you go to our folder now, so we see there's a Tethys app folder, so we go into there, and we have a setup.py and a Tethys app. So let's look at these guys. Okay, so I don't think I can make this site bigger, but this follows the same layout that we saw on our slide. We have a setup.py file, and then along with that we have a few directories. We have an init.py in almost every directory. And that is pretty important not to be deleted, because sometimes it might exist in empty directories that you might wonder why it is even there. But it links your packages and allows some of your folders to be exported. And so you would want to keep them and not mess around with those init.py files. But we are going to mess around with some files, and we'll see which ones we are going to do something with. So let's go back to our demo instructions and see what's happening over there. So we did our installation on Mac, and you could do the same thing on Windows. We have some instructions for that. You'll be prompted for some metadata. The next step we need to do is install that app. So what we've done so far is just generate the scaffold. We have just generated the app. We haven't we haven't linked the app to the portal, and that's what we are going to develop. That's what we are going to do right now. Is we're going to tell Python to go ahead and link that with us. However, the one thing that you might have noticed, and I'm sorry I skipped this, is that it says that is over here behind every command that I run. That is because I'm in a virtual environment, and the virtual environment is managed by Conda. The good part is when you install that is on your system, and it creates this nice little alias into your bash file, which is just a T. So if you type T, it automatically activates your Tethys virtual environment, which you can see it just basically runs this command from your installation location, and it activates the environment called Tethys. Virtual environments are just a way to manage Python packages and Python dependencies separately. So you don't have, you could have multiple Tethys portals installed on one system without each of them conflicting with each other, which is kind of the idea with these virtual environments. They're really amazing for any kind of Python project that you do. And if you haven't worked with them, I would seriously recommend that you look into Conda or something like that. And it allows you to set up nice little virtual environments for Python. You could have multiple versions. So if you have an app that works in 2.7 Python and not Python 3, so you could have multiple versions of different environments for that. And so that's what virtual environments help us with. But anyway, so we have this alias key that basically activates that Conda environment. I could also do source or Conda activate Tethys, and that would basically do the same thing. And so all the commands that we run from this point onwards, they have to be run within this virtual environment, because all the Tethys commands only work within that environment. If you try to do it on a non-Tethys environment, and if I try to do Tethys manage start or something like that, it doesn't do anything because it doesn't know what to do with it, honestly. So yeah. Anyways, so let's go back to our documentation, and it says, okay, now that we have an app, let's link it, and we make sure that we activate the Tethys environment. So you need to make sure that this is kind of showing up. Once that is there, we can go into our app, and there's a setup.py file right there. So let's install it. So we tell Python, hey, can you go ahead and do this? And we're going to say develop. Now, the good advantage of using develop versus install, Django can install packages in multiple ways. Develop basically creates a link between your app package and the actual app, so that when you make changes to your files, they're reflected in your app. Install, however, if we were to run install, it would copy over the files, and that would actually install the files permanently. So what would happen in that case is that changes you make to your local files on your app will not be reflected onto your app, onto the portal. So you'd have to run and install again to reflect those changes. So my recommendation, and that's what the documents also say, is use develop while you're developing the app. When you're running a production install, when you're running this on an actual server, you can easily say install, and that will take care of it. So we're going to do Python setup.py develop. It's going to load up Tethys, and it's going to do some quick management. And what it basically does is make sure that it can install all the dependencies that your app might need. So if we go back to our app files, and when we look at our setup.py, there's this dependencies object right here. And what this one does is you can list your Python dependencies in here. So let's say you wanted to get Fiona, and you wanted to get maybe ArcGIS plugin, and it will pull these and install it automatically. It also contains some information, the one that we entered in our command line earlier for our app. You can change all of this over here directly. You can put in a URL for your GitHub, licenses, all that fun stuff. But yeah, so this gives you a nice little definition of your app, and it helps Python install it, which is what we did right now over here. So now, since we have the app installed, let's go look at it. Let's go see if it's actually installed and what does it look like. To do that, the first thing we need to do is bring our server up. So we're going to say, hey, Tethys, can you come start, please? Again, sudo is not necessary. It's just my system and permissions that I need sudo for. And now if you notice, it actually shows us a few apps. It says, oh, you installed this Waterhack demo. Great. It says Django is now running. It's running on my local host, so I can just copy this URL and go to my browser, and let's look at that app. So it will ask me to log in. Great, it's going to be my default right now, admin and pass, hopefully. There we go. And then let's look at Waterhack Demo Week. So now you have this, very basic structured app. It shows you certain things you can do on the side, shows you what kind of buttons you could create. Tethys comes integrated with Bootstrap utilities, so you could actually use things from Bootstrap directly. They're called gizmos in Tethys, and we'll go over a few of them today. But yeah, it comes with a few buttons. Right now they don't do anything. It just shows you that these are the kinds of headings you could do. Shows you that you could create something like an example modal. So this modal also comes, if you notice, it's a Bootstrap modal, and it's already built into it, so you didn't have to, bring in Bootstrap, install the modal, do anything like that. And so the settings page just takes you to the app settings, and we'll talk about the settings in its section. Or you can hit the exit button and get back. Okay, so let's go back to our documentation and see where we are at. So we view a new app. We just go and say Tethys manage that, or you can use the alias that has been set up for you, your choice. There are some notes about that you might get an error saying that your database wasn't started. So Tethys itself uses a PostGIS database, a PostgreSQL database on the backend to manage its user access and to manage this list of apps. If you go to, for example, the site admin, it has all these fun settings that it's managing for you. And all of this is within that PostgreSQL database. If you get an error saying the database is not running, you can always do teach.db, and that will run your database now. Then you can go to browse, and it will show you this nice little screen that we just saw. A few sections of this that are kind of important for us, because we'll see these section names come up in our templates as well, is the different parts of our interface. So this one is the app navigation one. Just a toggle button that just, if you click on it, so let's go back here, it will hide your navigation. And I guess that's why it's called the app navigation toggle, and the branding, so you can put your icons and they'll show up over here. We have some exit buttons and action buttons over here. Then we have the app navigation section. This is the main app content block, and we'll see how to fill that up in a second. And then finally, there's an app actions block at the end where you can add some more buttons or actions that you would like the app to do. So now they provide us with a nice little tip saying if we have our server running here and we want to exit out of it, we can say Control-C, and that will quit your server. That's a universal shortcut, luckily. And so finally, then it talks about where our project is actually saved. And we've already seen that it basically generates this nice little layout, a framework, so that we can work on these separate files. And that's how to create a new Tethys app project. So then we're going to go and move on to our beginner concepts, and we're going to try and wrap these up in the next, I hope, 15 minutes. So we'll see how far we get today. The first thing that they talk about in the whole documentation is the app class. And this is pretty important because it kind of defines how your app works. This is the file, what it looks like, app.py. It's in your root directory, so your Tethys app, there's a root directory, Waterhackweek_demo, and in that there will be an app.py file. It will contain some of the same information that we gave it while setting up the app. This is the color, remember, we set it up. This is the description that I put in. Great. It has this default icon that it's using that is saved in /images/icon. So if you go to our public images, and you can see what that icon looks like, which is what shows up. I'll go back to my app.py. And then, above all, what app.py holds are these URL maps. So these are all custom settings. Let's not do that. Huh. Oh, where did I talk about it? Okay, I guess they talk about it a little after. But what the URL maps do is basically tell the Django app that, hey, if someone comes to my app and if someone comes to this URL, this is what I want you to do. This is where I want you to go. So what right now we've set up is if anybody comes to a URL /waterhackweek/demo, hyphen demo, which you can notice over here is /app/waterhackweek hyphen demo. And we're saying, hey, if anybody comes to this URL, could you please run this controller and generate a page for them? So before we go into this, what I would like to touch on is, let's see where to go. Just on MVC concept. So MVC is just a fancy word for more fancy concept, I guess, or that's been around computer science for a while, to develop apps where you separate your regions of concern. So you have a model, which is usually a database or your data input, or something that manages your data, that communicates with a controller. And a controller is a separate piece of system that by itself doesn't really do anything unless it can communicate to a view or a model. The view is what the client sees, and the controller generates that default view, gives it to the client. When the client makes any actions, so when I click on this page or do anything that would send an action to the server, the controller needs to act on it, and that's what the code in the controller is written for, to say, hey, the user clicked on this, what should I do? What should I show him? Should I show him this nice little model with this graph, or should I just give an error message? All that fun stuff is done by the controller. Then once it decides what it needs to do, it communicates with our model and gets the data and generates a view and sends it to the view. Basically sends it to the client, and now the client has a new view which it can interact with again. And so this goes on and on and on. And that's what the MVC, the Model View Controller concept in computer science exists as. So that is based on a very tight MVC architecture. Everything, there's a model, there's a view, and a controller. Our models are usually our PostGIS database. It could be a Postgres database. It could be a data source from Waterhawk Flow Service. It could be a data set from ECMWF, from Landsat, from anywhere. So you can have a lot of different data sets come into Tethys, as long as you can read them in Python. That becomes kind of your model. So if you go back to our tab now, we see over here we have a control, and we're saying, hey, whenever someone comes to this page, hand over the control to this guy, and he is going to figure out what to do. He is going to say render a page or do something. So now if you go back here, and I'm going to skip over the app settings now because we're going to look at it again eventually. What it does is at this point is it says, okay, let's go ahead and call this controller .home. So in Python, what this refers to is saying that, hey, within my package, within my app, look for a file called controllers. And within that controllers file, can you please look for a function called home? That is kind of what this syntax refers to. And so that's what Django tries to do. So it comes to our directory, to our Waterhack demo, and looks for a file called controllers, and it finds it. And within that file, it looks for a function called home. Now you can see the home function gets a request object. So this is basically the user interaction that has come in. If the user sent any parameters, if the user had any API calls, you could design it using something like this. It has a decorator on it. It's saying, and these decorators come with Django. It's saying that for anybody to visit this page, they have to be logged into our Tethys portal. There are certain apps that require protection to their data, so it's helpful if you want to restrict login. You can do additional decorators to have a simple auth or a different kind of login there as well. But anyways, so if you notice now, there are some controllers happening over here. So what we're doing is we're generating some data that we are going to send to a context object. And then we're going to say, hey, can you render this page with this context? So I want you to render this template, and here's my data. Django works on a very templating language, which allows you to write less HTML and generate more content. And so what it does right here is, let's look at the Waterhack demo, and let's look at our templates. Then it says, okay, I'm going to go and generate this template. And so now if we start looking at this, we can see stuff that is similar to what we see on our page. We have these headings right here. We have these navigation. So we can see this is the header button section. There's a different block. So this is for the modal that we just saw. And then we have these app actions section. So we have, let's bring our server back up. Okay, there we go. So we have these headings, and then we have these 4 or 5 buttons right here. And so if you go back to your code, we can see that each one of these buttons is a gizmo. And this name, save underscore button, comes right from our controllers file, if you notice, that we had a save underscore button object. So whatever you put in your context becomes available to your HTML page, and we can use that in your HTML page to render some data. Okay, so we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to just do this fun stuff. So over here, they're asking us to open this file and replace it with these contents. So we're going to change some of the stuff. Now, however, I don't want to change everything, but I just want to add a map. So I'm just going to copy this section and look for that in my template. So in my home, there's an app content block. And so I'm going to delete these. These are tags that Django uses to mark blocks. Then I'm going to say, hey, can you put in a gizmo? And I do not want all of these headings. Maybe I want the welcome. So I'm going to take the welcome, put it right here, and then put the gizmo right there. Now, this is not going to do anything. I mean, if you load the app up, and if you notice, what happens is every time you make changes, your app will automatically restart if it needs to reload something. And now it's saying, hey, this map doesn't exist in my data. So because I only have these save buttons and everything, so hey, give me a map. Okay, let's do it. That's not a problem. So let's go into our controllers and let's import some maps. So what we do is we go into our controller and we look at the Tethys SDK underscore gizmos. And there's a lot of different gizmos. So if you notice, all of these are coming from the button gizmo that was imported. But there's another gizmo called map view. And we're going to go ahead and use that, this map. And we're going to say, hey, I want a map view, and we're going to tell it what type of map we want, and that is going to do it for us. And so we just need this little piece of code. Instead of bringing in the JavaScript, the CSS files, and all that fun stuff, you don't need to do all of that because Tethys will take care of it. So now we go here. I don't really, these buttons can exist, but I'm going to add a damn map. It's got some parameters that you can pass in. Each one of these gizmos is listed out on their portal. So if you go to their SDK, Gizmos API, you can see different gizmos and how we use them. And there's a whole showcase that you can access that tells you how to use a gizmo, what options you can pass in. So for example, if I was to wonder how the map worked, I would just go to the map view and see what options I can pass in to the map. It also gives us some other advanced features where you can zoom to extend specify specific versions of open layers, and lots of good examples on this documentation right here. But let's go back to our tutorial. Let's go back to our beginner concepts, and we were looking at adding a map to our page. So we are right here, and we have gone into a piece of code right here. Yeah, and added this. Now we need to make sure that this object gets passed around. So we have a DAM inventory map. I'm going to give it the same name and just pass it around. No, I will not purchase a license today. So anyways, now we have our context, we have our home, and we see that that's being passed in, and then it's trying to render that. Now notice this name and this name should match exactly, and so it knows where to locate the object that it needs to render. And now we can go back to our browser and see if that worked. Yay, now we have a map. So, and I mean, if you look at it, the work required was not that bad to get a map into an app. Now you can do fun things with a map. If you wanted to, there's a JavaScript main file in the public folder that you can add some JavaScript if you wanted to interact with the map, or if you wanted to change certain features on it. And that's what you would do. And let's go back to our concepts now. So we saved our changes, and now we refresh the page. There's some more details over here, what a gizmo does and how you can use gizmos. And we'll go into these details more when we plan for our apps during the Waterhackweek. You can also do custom styles, and I'm going to skip that section for now because we don't have enough time. And then finally, let's just look at this section really quick where we're going to add a new page to our app, and we're going to hope that that page works. So what we want to do is, there are 3 steps. First one, we need to create a new template. So we go back to our app, we go to our templates directory, look for the Waterhackweek demo folder, and within there we have a base and home. And if you notice, there's some inheritance going on over here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file in there saying test2.html, and let's have it import from the base HTML. What this does is, in our app, this section, this entire main region comes from your app. However, you can have the same navigation and the same toolbars, the same bottom bar for the rest of your app. And since you don't want to reconfigure them over and over, you can just set them up in a base HTML, and then these blocks kind of get inherited as they go on into these apps, into these separate templates. So all I'm going to do is say, hey, just give me a base page. It's going to be empty. I don't want any content really, but go ahead and copy some of this. I'm not going to do a gizmo. I'm just going to leave a heading there and saying, hey, this is your new page. So just so that we know we are on a new page. Again, make sure this is within the block, and that's where it knows where to put it. If you put it outside the block, it just randomly floats and it doesn't really get on the page. And so now we have a new page. Let's go to the next step and see add a new controller to controllers.py. So remember, on our app.py, each URL that we want the people to go to has its own controller. So you could use multiple controllers to render the same page, but ideally it's recommended that you have a separate controller for each page that you want to do. So I am going to create a new one saying test2. It is going to receive a request, which as of now I'm not doing anything with it, but all I wanted to do is please go ahead and render my template. And this time I want you to render test2.html. And I don't have a context, I just have an empty object right now, and just do the same request. So we save that, and now we have a new controller. The last thing we need to do is tell the application, hey, now if someone comes to my URL/test2, this is what I want you to enter. This is what page should be generated. So that is the last thing, and what we'll do is we'll create a new URL map. So URL maps is a big list of URL maps, which was weird to say, but yeah, URL map is a list of URL maps is a list of URL map. Anyways, and then we have a new one, so we're going to call this test2. The URL for this is Waterhackweek demo/test2. Or you can call it test. It doesn't really matter. The URLs don't have to match what the name of the controller is. You just have to tell it which controller to use. And we can say, hey, test2. That's the controller because that's what we named it over here. And that should do it. So let's go look at our page now. And this base page still works. However, if I go to test 2, it doesn't show anything because I named it as test. So if I go to test, now it renders a new page. But if you notice, we only did the work through writing this piece out. All of this nice little toolbar, sidebar, bottom. So we still have the bottom bar, but we're missing the buttons because in this page we didn't tell it to create any buttons, which is why it did. And yeah, so that's what you would do to add a new page. And then finally, you can create some links to that new page, which is fun stuff. You can add some navigation. All of what we did today, the ready solution is actually on GitHub. So if you just would like to explore the solution rather than following along or trying it on your own, that is totally fine. You can go to GitHub and try that out, but I would highly recommend trying to install that on your system. And just working through this example, which we could finish in, about 30 minutes. So, and yeah, that's I think it. We would like to remind you that there is a Slack channel for all of this stuff. So there's a Slack channel for planning projects. And so if you can come up with Tethys apps, or you need help with the Tethys app that you are developing, or you would like to develop a Tethys app, please log on to the channel and don't hesitate to reach out to me. And yeah, that's it for me.
Rohit, do you mind opening your Slack channel just so we can show people sort of where
absolutely.
The conversation is going to, where we'll be having the conversation now that the cyber seminars are over? Between now and Waterhackweek, this is where all the action will be. If you haven't logged in yet, search your email for an invite. If you go to maybe into the Tethys apps, or I can see you haven't added the cyber seminar channel. So if you add the plus sign next to channel, you can add the cyber seminars, and then
there we go.
We can have, for example, we do have a question from Yinfan, which is, how can anyone register for tethys.byu.edu?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I think we haven't enabled that there, but you can always use a guest account. That's really weird. So let me make sure the guest. Yeah. So guest and guest. I'm gonna track those out here. Okay. So yeah, if you need a username and password, it's guest/guest. For tethys.byu.edu.
Okay, so let's put that into the Slack channel for cyber seminars, and then maybe also copy onto the channel for Tethys apps. Does anyone else have questions for Rohit about Tethys apps or anything you saw today? Feel free to put it in. I'll just take the next few minutes. You could there's a few options for communicating with Rohit or any of the instructors using Slack. You can use any of these channels like you've just seen. Or Rohit, do you want to show direct messages if you just want to send a private message to Rohit? For people who haven't used Slack before, you could show us.
Just hit
you could
direct
send me
messages. Yeah.
Send me a message about how excited you are to come to Seattle. Oh. Okay, thank you. So to wrap up the cyber seminars, I just want to let everyone know that these cyber seminars are designed to give you an introduction to the types of things you could learn about at Waterhackweek. All of the instructors in this series are going to be available in person at Waterhackweek to answer your questions, to work with you towards your own learning goals. I'd encourage everyone to pick one or two goals that you have for the week. Perhaps your goal is to publish your data set on HydroShare, or your goal is to build a Tethys app with your data. Or your goal might be just to learn how to build code with a team on GitHub. We don't expect you to have, like, of all the topics shown in the 8 cyber seminars, we don't anticipate that anyone would be able to accomplish mastering all of those in 1 week. We wanted to give you an idea and invite you to become familiar with new tools and opportunities you may not have known are available for your water research. And if you have any questions, like we've shown on the Slack channel about the cyber seminars, or if you go back and look at some of them, we're all available there on those channels to answer more questions. And then in the next few minutes, I just wanted to also say a few words about the Hack Week projects. So for Waterhackweek, we're following the Hack Week educational model, which means we're spending our mornings on educational tutorials, which will be along the lines of like what you've seen in the cyber seminars. We'll maybe scale back and have more introductory materials that help scaffold you to be able to have whatever skills you need to be able to implement some of the things that you've seen in the cyber seminars. And then in the afternoons, we'll be working on team projects. So how this will work is on Monday, March 25th, all participants will have an opportunity to pitch their project idea. Any participant who is invited to work on any of the projects towards your own learning goals. So if you have a water quality data set and you're interested in building a mapping app like Katya, then you might have your own water quality data set, and a team could be built around mapping water quality data, for example. And as people communicate on Slack about what their learning goals are or what their data sets are, we expect these projects to emerge based on how we all integrate our goals and ideas and data sets. So the role of the project scientist would be to work with a team of ideally 6 to 7 participants who self-organize around that project scientist team project. And the project scientist will integrate everyone's individual contributions and work towards a team outcome on a shared research question using a shared set of data. We'll also have data scientists who are working with teams to help support each of you on working through using tools or using data sets that you want to learn more about. And the project research questions and data sets, the idea is that they're broadly interesting to a diverse group. So you might be working with a water quality team that's mapping, and in the end, learn a lot about spatial temporal data sets that integrate point data sets and maybe interpolate to grids. So that fundamental data science question could be applicable across a range of data sets. So you can come into working as a team at any level of knowing what you want to work on, or knowing what tools you want to learn, or having really specific goals on a research question that you want to pitch to all of us, and build a team around your specific research question and data sets. So if you have a project idea in mind, we want to give you the opportunity to start talking about it in advance so you have time to prepare data sets, refine your ideas. And so that Slack channel called Project Brainstorming is where we can start having those conversations. And as you refine your ideas, if you want to pitch a project to everyone on Monday, you could read through the project guidelines, look at our GitHub repository for projects, get an idea for how much, what are the expectations of that leadership role, and then you could start your own Slack channel to have those conversations about that team project. So if not seeing any more questions, if you have questions about Slack, about cyber seminars, about the projects, please feel free to ask in the chat channel in the next 5 minutes, or on Slack. So I want to thank all of our cyber seminar instructors and presenters. Everyone's put in a lot of work, and it's really exciting to see all of the range of new tools that are available. And I want to give a special thank you to Nicoletta Christia, who's our Waterhackweek coordinator. She's arranged and supported this series and all of our speakers, and I'm really excited and grateful for all of the work putting that together. I'd also like to thank the CUAHSI team for supporting the Cyberseminar and building a strong hydrologic science research community. Thanks to all the Waterhackweek participants for your time and your collaboration on this exciting project and event. I also want to give an update that on Thursday, March 28th, we're going to be having a Waterhackweek community mixer from 4 to 6 p.m. in Seattle at the Intellectual House on UW campus. We'll be having projects. Leaders give lightning talks, and this event is open to the broader UW and Seattle water research community. We're very excited to be hosting a special guest, Sally Jewell, who was the Secretary of Interior under President Barack Obama. She's going to talk to us about her vision for the importance of water environmental research and education around data science. So not seeing any more questions, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you at Waterhackweek on Slack and on GitHub. Have a good rest of your day.